Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Livingston, and I am the Bitcoin Wizard. Welcome back, my dearest little captains. Ladies and gentlemen, gather around and buckle your seatbelts because your 401k is about to get waterboarded with truth. Picture the retirement advice industrial complex as a wheezing carnival barker shouting, "Step right up, put every penny into the S&P, and pray the Fed doesn't slip on a banana peel." Meanwhile, your future self is eating cat food in a trailer that doubles as a flood zone tax write-off. Today, we torch that clown tent. We are strapping the venerable 4% rule to a rocket powered by digital scarcity and pure monetary thermonuclear energy. Bitcoin, think of it as replacing that rusty lawnmower engine of the legacy system with a reactor core from Iron Man's chest. Same withdrawal math, radically different outcome. I can hear the skeptics already clutching their index fund pamphlets like emotional support animals, but Bitcoin is volatile. Buddy, have you checked the national debt clock lately? The US dollar is on more mood-altering substances than Hunter Biden's memoir. Volatility is everywhere, except Bitcoin actually pays you for the ride instead of sending you coupons for half-off rotisserie chicken at Costco. I'm not saying sell grandma's oxygen tank to market buy sats. I'm saying open your mind. A measured slice of Bitcoin properly secured turns a sleepy 4% rule into a fire-breathing dragon of purchasing power. We'll keep the spoilers light here, but by the end of this deck here, you will understand why a balanced allocation that includes Bitcoin can morph a polite middle-class nest egg into a generational war chest. So silence your financial advisor's soothing whale song, grab a cold storage wallet, and prepare to witness the monetary equivalent of replacing a Prius with a SpaceX booster. Next slide's coming, try not to faint. All right, kids, time for a quick history lesson before we strap our retirement wagon to the digital comet. In the mid-90s, a few spreadsheet necromancers at Trinity University asked, how much can boomers siphon from their nest egg without croaking penniless? They crunched 70 years of market data, probably fueled by black coffee and existential dread, and popped out the 4% rule. So the translation for normal humans, you take whatever lump sum you have on day one of retirement, rip out 4% of that number for living expenses, then adjust that payout for inflation each year. Do that, and then you keep a half-decent mix of stocks and bonds, and you statistically avoid eating drywall for 30 years. Example, start with the cool $1 million and then withdraw $40,000 the first year, bump it up with inflation later, and historically, you survive about 9 out of 10 parallel universes. Sounds comforting, right? Except the original study assumed a Fed wasn't mainlining liquidity like a Wall Street frat boy at a Miami yacht party. It assumed bonds offered yields higher than the interest on your blockbuster late fees. Most important, it assumed your average retiree could stomach watching their portfolio get body slammed by bear markets without panic selling at the bottom. So keep those assumptions in your frontal cortex here, because in a minute we're going to toss a new ingredient into the punch bowl. Something that doesn't follow the polite rules of Wall Street tea etiquette. But for now, tattoo this on your mind. 4% is the withdrawal guardrail, carved in ancient financial stone. And if you respect it, you might just keep the electricity on during your golden years. Your TV won't surprisingly shut off during your 7th annual Beverly Hillbillies Marathon. Ready to see what happens when we spice up the formula? Stay seated. The ride operator hasn't even buckled you in yet. So time to inspect the vanilla sundae of retirement portfolios, the mighty S&P 500, the index fund your HR department spoon feeds you while bragging about the free donuts in the break room. Between January 2015 and December 2024, it clocked a respectable 243% return, roughly 13% per year, which sounds amazing until you remember eggs doubled in price, and your HOA now charges a breathing fee every quarter. Let's put flesh on those numbers. Drop $1 million into the index on New Year's Day 2015 and fast forward a decade. You are sitting on $3.43 million bucks, give or take a rounding error. Cue the slow clap, folks, under the classic 4% rule. That bankroll spits out about 137 grand of first-year spending money. Index to inflation, congratulations, you can finally buy guac at Chipotle without checking your bank balance. In 2020, markets cratered faster than WeWork's valuation. In 2022, you watched a bear markets gnaw 18% off the top while CNBC hosts screamed like toddlers at a dentist. You white-knuckled the ride, resisted selling at the bottom, and survived. Well done. Still, let's be honest, that 13% compound growth is like a solid B- student. Respectable but not life-changing. It pays the bills, maybe funds a cruise where you get norovirus in the buffet line, but it will not mint generational dynasties. For that, you need something spicier than a basket of 500 multinational conglomerates politely shuffling dividends your way. So keep this benchmark in your mind, because in a minute we're gonna spike the punch bowl with an orange pill that makes these numbers look like children's Tylenol. The polite portion of the presentation ends right now. Welcome to the part of the show where traditional finance types start twitching like they just mainlined espresso. Same January 2015 start date, but instead of the S&P's polite golf clap, we unleash Bitcoin, the monetary honey badger that breaks every china plate on Wall Street's buffet. Over the decade, Bitcoin posted a casual 41,536% return, about 96% a year compounded. That is not a typo. 1 million bucks grew into $416 million, enough to buy the entire cul-de-sac, pave it in marble, and install a solid gold dog park for your little pooch. Yes, the ride came with a couple of 70+% face melters. Picture the steepest Six Flags drop. Now imagine it in fire and social media panic. 2018 and 2022 felt like getting audited by the IRS while skydiving without a parachute. But anyone who held on through the puke-inducing volatility came out of the other side sipping mojitos in their private asteroid bunker. And the 4% rule at a $416 million balance, your safe withdrawal is $16.6 million a year indexed to inflation. That is enough cash flow to buy a small nation's GDP every Christmas, yet the original principle theoretically never runs dry. Keep the blood pressure meds handy, folks. Next, we explore what happens when we blend this financial nitroglycerin with your respectable S&P porridge. Spoiler, the math starts yelling in tongues. So time to mix the vanilla ice cream with ghost pepper salsa and see what happens. We start with your respectable $1 million S&P Sunday. That got you $3.4 million and a 137 grand allowance. Respectable, sure, like winning a gift card to Olive Garden. Now sprinkle in just 20% Bitcoin. Suddenly the ending balance rockets to $86 million. Your 4% withdrawal becomes $3.4 million a year. That is Olive Garden franchise money, unlimited breadsticks for every cousin you have ever ignored. Feeling spicy, push Bitcoin to 40%. The ending balance tallies $169 million with a $6.7 million first-year paycheck. That is start your own space program money, or at least build a moat around the house money. And of course, full Bitcoin degeneracy stays parked at $416 million. We covered that. It is the financial equivalent of discovering oil under the dog park. The key takeaway, folks, a small asymmetric bet of Bitcoin into a polite portfolio gains into jaw-dropping generational loot without selling your soul to the volatility gods. You can keep 80% in a grandma-approved index fund and still party like a Saudi prince. Here is where the matrix glitches, folks. You keep 80 cents of every dollar in the sensible khaki pants world of index funds, then you slip the other 20 cents into Bitcoin like a flask at grandma's church picnic. Suddenly, the polite $3.4 million nest egg from our stocks-only universe mutates into 86 million, and your 4% paycheck detonates from $137K to $3.4 million a year. That is not a rounding error. That is winning the Powerball without having to pose next to a giant novelty check at a gas station. Why does this happen? Because Bitcoin is an asymmetric warhead. Downside is capped at 100% of what you put in. Upside is an open bar on a zero-gravity space cruise. You risk a fender bender, you might land at a private island with its own zip code. Traditional finance likes to talk about efficient frontiers. Bitcoin launches efficient trebuchets. And note the discipline. 20% is not a YOLO, it is a measured scoop. So send this to your boomer grandpa who refuses to dabble a little bit. You can still sleep at night, read boring Vanguard newsletters, and brag at the neighborhood barbecue that your portfolio allocation chart looks like a rainbow wheel of prudence. The secret is the math, not reckless gambling. Tiny slice, huge bang, portfolio turns from Honda Civic into a Tesla Plaid without trading your kidneys on the dark web. Imagine telling your financial advisor that you want a 20% crypto sleeve. Watch his face drain like you just asked to pay fees in Chuck E. Cheese tokens. Smile politely, move the money anyway, write asymmetric hedging research on the transfer form. Then frame the withdrawal checks that start arriving later. So let's rip off the band-aid. Bitcoin occasionally behaves like it snorted 6 lines of pre-workout and chased it with cough syrup. In 2018, the Orange Dragon plummeted -73%, then did a dead cat bounce so hard it broke the cat. Meanwhile, the S&P, our cardigan-wearing uncle, had its own midlife crisis in 2022, tumbling a genteel -18%, like spilling Merlot on khakis and calling 911. Blends them 80-20, and the worst calendar year drawdown clocks in around -29%. That's ugly, yes, but it's the financial equivalent of ripping off a toenail, not losing the whole foot. And remember, that same blend later printed $86 million, so the pain now, the yacht later. The 4% rule is the stoic Buddhist monk of withdrawal strategies. It only works if you don't sprint out of the temple screaming during the bear market exorcism. You sell at the bottom, you swap your Lamborghini dreams for a 2004 Toyota Corolla that smells like gym socks and broken dreams. Here is a practical game plan. Keep 3 to 5 years of living expenses in cash or short-term treasuries so you're never forced to sell your Bitcoin at the bottom because you become scared like a little rat. Rebalance annually. Trim a little BTC after monster runs. Top it off after nuclear winters. Think of it as shaving the werewolf before the full moon. And stop doom scrolling. The lizard people on Bloomberg are engineered to raise your cortisol faster than a surprise IRS letter. So the bottom line, the volatility isn't a bug, it is the initiation rite. Endure the shakes, collect the asymmetric treasure, and send your financial advisor a postcard from whichever tax haven you choose to haunt. Strap in, class on implementation begins next. Welcome to practical land, population U, because theory without execution is just motivational Tinder for finance nerds. Time to turn caffeine-fueled dreams into a portfolio that could survive both zombie apocalypse and CNBC panel discussion. Step 1, pick your poison percentage. Decide how much Bitcoin heat your heart can handle. 10% if you still sleep with a nightlight, 20% if you laugh at horror movies. Anything beyond that and you're auditioning for a Netflix docuseries, Crypto Degens, Lost and Mostly Broke. And for all the Bitcoin maxis watching, listen, this is geared toward normies, the people who don't understand Bitcoin. They gotta get in with baby steps, so calm down. I know you're 100% gigaported. Shut up. Step 2 is to dollar cost average like a monk. No heroic lump sum buys at 3 a.m. after watching YouTube Moonboy charts. Automate a weekly purchase. Small, boring, relentless. The financial equivalent of Chinese water torture for fiat. Over time, volatility smooths out like a Botoxed forehead. Meanwhile, your stack quietly fattens. Step 3, annual rebalancing, aka trim the hedgehog. Once a year on a day you pick for ritual significance, log in, breathe deep, and shave off off the extra Bitcoin gains if the slice ballooned beyond your risk band. Buy a bit of S&P, keep allocation lines straight like a Marine's haircut. This prevents your sensible portfolio from waking up one morning wearing leopard print and demanding bottle service. Step 4. Cold storage or bust. Exchanges are the Chuck E. Cheese arcades of crypto. Fun until the power goes out and the tokens vanish. Buy a hardware wallet. Set up your multi-sig. Stash backup seed phrases somewhere safer than your sock drawer. Treat the process like you are laundering nuclear launch codes because in a sense you are. Step 5. Keep a cash buffer, the boring hero. Park 3 to 5 years of living expenses in your treasury bills. That cash is your volatility shock absorber, the stuff that's gonna let you sleep at night, letting you pay rent while markets do interpretive dance. Think of it as sandbags during a Bitcoin hurricane, unglamorous yet life-saving. So if you execute these 5 moves consistently, ignore the dopamine carnival of price feeds, and you stand a real chance of transforming the average savings into a perpetual motion money machine. So now it is time to hand our shiny portfolio to a sadistic computer program that hurls it through 10,000 alternate timelines where everything that can go wrong does, sometimes simultaneously. Welcome to Monte Carlo, the financial Hunger Games. So here's how the torture works. We're going to feed historical Bitcoin and S&P returns into the algorithm, including the ugliest drawdowns anybody remembers and a few nightmares we had to invent. We're going to randomize inflation spikes, bond market tantrums, asteroid impacts on soybean futures, you name it. We're going to roll the dice 10,000 times over a 30-year retirement horizon and tally the survivors. So these are the results that make the actuaries weep with envy. A classic 100% portfolio survives roughly 90% of paths. Respectable, but still leaves a 1 in 10 chance of you having to learn to knit sweaters for Etsy to buy groceries. Our 80-20 S&P coin chimera clears the finish line at 96%, even when the model forces Bitcoin to replicate 2 back-to-back 80% crashes. If you kick the Bitcoin sleeve to 40% of the portfolio, the success rate tips above 98%. Partly because the growth is so explosive, the simulation runs out of ways to kill it without resorting to meteor strikes on both Wall Street and your cold storage bunker. The bottom line, if you run a Monte Carlo simulation, the computer tried every doom scenario short of Godzilla vaping the New York Fed, and the blended strategy still walks out alive and flexing. The next slide, we wrap it all into a call to action so compelling you consider naming your firstborn Satoshi. This is the part of the infomercial where the lights dim, the host whispers, "But wait, there's more," and suddenly you realize the more is a probability-weighted money cannon, and it's aimed straight at your checking account. So the recap in plain English, the old 4% rule is a respectable Buick. It gets you to retirement bingo night, but sprinkle in 10 to 20% Bitcoin into that gas tank, and the Buick morphs into a twin-turbo roadster that drifts around inflation potholes while flipping the bird to Jerome Powell. You wanted safe income, now you have a potential 8-figure war chest. You feared volatility, but now you wield it like it's Thor's hammer. Traditional finance calls this reckless. Traditional finance also sold you bond funds that yield less than a supermarket coupon. So consider the source. So here's your action plan. Pick your allocation band today, not next week, not after your cousin's wedding, today. Automate weekly Bitcoin buys, set and forget, stop watching price candles like a raccoon on Adderall. Move coins to cold storage before an exchange pulls a disappearing act, and then rebalance once a year, keep 3 years of your cash, and then go live your life. Do this and the 4% rule transforms from don't go broke insurance into a generational vault. Your heirs will fight over who gets the hardware wallet instead of who pays grandpa's reverse mortgage interest. Close your laptops, open your brokerage app, and take the orange pill. It is your ticket out of the fiat circus, and the clowns are already setting the tent on fire. My name is Adam Livingston. I am the Bitcoin Wizard. If you enjoyed this content, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. It will help the algorithm spread the orange pill gospel to the masses. Have a terrific day, folks. Don't party too hard. Class dismissed.